This video is to cover OCR Biology A 612 topic, which is patterns of inheritance, and this time we're going to focus on sex linkage. Remember that in human beings we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in each of our cells. 22 of these pairs are what we call autosomal chromosomes, i.e. the maternal and paternal chromosomes that make up that pair contain the same genes as each other, and the genes are on the same locus. The 23rd pair is what we refer to as the sex chromosomes. And here, if you are a girl, you will have 2 X chromosomes making up the 23rd pair, one of which you inherited from your father and one of which you inherited from your mother. Both X chromosomes will have the same genes running along the chromosomes in the same positions, in the same loci, even if they are alternative alleles. For example, on one of those pairs of chromosomes, maybe in this position is the sequence of bases that codes for the protein that gives you a specific eye color. In the same position, you are also going to have a gene that codes for eye color for the other corresponding chromosome within that homologous pair, which means both parents are contributing a version of the gene that contributes to eye color, whether that gene is the same as each other. So whether you are homozygous, you have got 2 versions of the same gene, or whether you are heterozygous, you have alternative versions. If you are heterozygous, then the eye color of the offspring will be determined by whether the alleles they have inherited from each parent are dominant or recessive. When you look at the 23rd pair of chromosomes within the human genome, what we refer to as the sex chromosomes, what you see is that it is possible to either have 2 chromosomes in this position which are both the same size and shape as each other, what we refer to as the XX genotype, or you can have 1 X chromosome and one which is significantly shorter, what we refer to as the Y chromosome. If you have the XX genotype, that means this person is a girl, and a boy would have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. Going back to GCSE level inheritance, for a girl, if she has 2 X chromosomes, she can only pass on an X chromosome within her gametes after reduction division and independent assortment. That is the only thing that the mother can actually pass on. The father can potentially pass on either an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. After fertilization, depending on which sperm cell fertilizes which egg cell, that will determine whether the offspring is going to be a girl or a boy. For the 22 autosomal chromosome pairs, every single gene will have 2 copies, one on the maternal chromosome and one on the paternal chromosome. Within the sex chromosomes, there is a section called the homologous region where you will have a version of the gene on the X chromosome and a version of the gene on the Y chromosome. So if you have a characteristic which is coded for by a gene on this section, then you will have 2 versions of that gene, and whether or not you inherit that characteristic will depend on typical monohybrid inheritance rules. However, if there is a gene on this section of the X chromosome, for example, the gene that codes for clotting factors, as you can see, there isn't a corresponding region of the Y chromosome, which means, let's say there is a recessively inherited disease like haemophilia. If you have the recessive allele that you've inherited on the X chromosome, there is no possibility of having a healthy, normal allele which is dominant on the Y chromosome because there isn't a corresponding section of that chromosome. So you can only inherit one version of that gene, and that is the version which is definitely going to be expressed. Haemophilia is a recessively inherited condition, and I'm going to show that with a lowercase h. When drawing genetic cross diagrams for showing sex-linked characteristics, you have to link the characteristic with whether it appears on the X chromosome or whether it appears on the Y chromosome. Because if it appears on the X chromosome and there isn't a corresponding section on the Y chromosome, then that characteristic will be expressed even if you only have one version of a recessive allele. Let's use haemophilia as our example then. So let's say father is healthy and does not have a haemophilia allele, which means that the X section probably has a normal, healthy allele, and there isn't a corresponding Y one. Father is healthy. For the mother, let's say one of her X chromosomes carries the healthy allele, but the other one carries the one which affects clotting factors and will cause haemophilia. This mother has one dominant allele and one recessive allele, so mother is also healthy. Mother might be healthy, but she is a carrier. Potentially, she could pass on the recessive haemophilia allele to her offspring. When you show that information in a genetic cross diagram, we say, there's mother's alleles, mother's chromosomes, one of them carrying the healthy allele and one of them carrying the recessive allele. And here are father's chromosomes, and father only has the healthy allele. When you put that information into a Punnett square, you've either got two potential X chromosomes, both of which carry the healthy allele, which means this offspring is going to be healthy, no haemophilia, and it's a girl. Or you can inherit two X chromosomes, one of them the healthy allele from the father, and one of them the haemophilia allele, which means this offspring is a girl and she is a carrier, healthy, but she is also heterozygous. Or you can have a boy who has inherited the normal healthy allele on his X chromosome. Y chromosome doesn't have an allele, but that's okay. You only need one. This boy is going to be healthy. The final possibility is that the offspring inherits this X chromosome from the mother, which has the haemophilia allele, and they inherit the Y chromosome from the father. Now remember, the Y chromosome doesn't have a corresponding allele, and there is only one allele which is present for this gene, which is the haemophilia one. So even though there is only one haemophilia allele and it is recessive, because there's only one, that is going to be expressed, which means that this offspring is going to be a boy who has haemophilia. That means these two parents have a 1 in 4 chance of having a child with haemophilia, or if they have a son, a 50-50 chance that their son will have haemophilia. Here are a few other common examples of sex-linked genetic disorders. So you've got haemophilia, colour blindness, and DMD, muscular dystrophy. Because the gene coding for these characteristics is on the section of the X chromosome that doesn't have a corresponding Y section, you are much more likely to see these diseases in boys than girls. Because in girls, because they have two potential alleles, one of them is likely to be healthy and normal and dominant, and so the recessively inherited conditions wouldn't affect them as much, unless they'd inherited two recessive alleles from each parent. We mostly consider human examples when we're teaching this topic, but it doesn't mean questions couldn't come up asking you about different species. As long as you understand the basic principles of sex-linked inheritance, the same kind of understanding can help you regardless of the exam question. The next scene is going to show an example of an exam question. Take a screenshot of it, have a go at working it out, and then play the rest of the video so you can check what you've done. Here's one example. The inheritance of some alleles depends on the sex of the individual. In birds, sex is determined by a combination of Z and W chromosomes. Male birds have two Z chromosomes and female birds have one Z chromosome and one Y chromosome. So straight away what we can see is there is one very definite difference between birds and humans. Here, they've identified the chromosomes as Z and W instead of X and Y. Males have two Z chromosomes. That means they have two chromosomes which are the same size and shape as each other, and female birds have one Z and one W chromosome. The principles we've just covered for human beings look like they are switched around when we're talking about these particular species. A pigeon is a bird. The colour of pigeon feathers is determined by a single gene on the Z chromosome. The feather colour gene has 3 alleles: ZA, ZB with the dominant B, or Z lowercase b for the recessive B. So what we can see is that pigeons can have red feathers if they carry the A allele on the Z chromosome. They can have blue feathers if they carry a dominant B on the Z chromosome, and they can have brown feathers if they carry the recessive B on the Z chromosome. The Y chromosome contains no gene for feather colour. So that means that if it's a female this time, because females have one Z and one W, whatever the allele is on that Z chromosome, that is the version of feathers that the bird is going to have. With a male, you have normal monohybrid rules apply, which means it will depend on if it's homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, or heterozygous. A pigeon with the genotype AB, 2 Z chromosomes, which means it is a male, was crossed with a pigeon with the genotype ZBW. So because it's Z and W, need to remember not to get it mixed up. Z and W means this is a female, and because it's the dominant B, this bird has blue feathers. So let's start by identifying the phenotypes. For this individual parent, here, they are going to be, because you've got 2 Zs, this is a male, 1 A and 1 lowercase b. Well, A is dominant to both of the Bs, which means this is a male with red feathers. For the other parent, she has Z and W chromosomes, which means this individual is a female. She only has 1 allele, which is the capital B for blue, so this female is going to have blue feathers. When we look at the potential gametes, remember that when reduction division happens, these chromosomes are going to be separated during meiosis, which means the potential gametes, the male can either pass on a Z with an A or a Z with a recessive B, and the female can pass on a Z with a dominant B, or she can pass on a W. I prefer to draw these genetic cross diagrams out as a Punnett square because I'm less likely to make a mistake. Whichever way round you have done it, what the examiners are looking for is the offspring genotypes and the offspring phenotypes. As I fill this in then, I'm going to see I've got potential for 2 Zs, which is a male, Z and W, a female, Z and Z, a male, Z and W, a female. I then need to complete which different alleles for wing feathers are being passed on to these individuals. If I look at the information together, at the genotypes of my offspring, this individual has 1 A and 1 dominant B allele. Because A is dominant to both of the Bs, then this individual is going to have red feathers. The second individual has only got 1 A feather colour gene, which is for red wings. There isn't a corresponding W, so this individual is also going to have red wings. This individual has 1 dominant blue allele and 1 recessive brown allele. So it's normal monohybrid inheritance, which means this bird is going to have blue feathers. The last bird only has 1 recessive allele for feather colour genes. On the Z chromosome, there is nothing on the Y chromosome, and because Z lowercase b gives brown feathers, this bird must have brown feathers. When answering the question, it's then important to go back to the original question. The original question wants to know the offspring genotypes and the offspring phenotypes. If that information is available in the exam in this way in a Punnett square, then you have done that. You've got the phenotypes and the genotypes. The only thing you should make sure that you've done is specify whether this is a male or whether it's a female. That's probably one of the trickier examples of sex linkage questions that you might get asked about in patterns of inheritance. But again, as long as you can remember what the chromosome combinations are, the fact that they are different in this case where it's the females which have two different sex chromosomes and the males which are the same ones, the basic principles are still the same, so you should be able to answer any questions on this.